Hello and welcome. I'm Tom with a list of interesting things, and this is Interesting Things About Politics. Today we're looking at the first 2020 presidential debate between Democratic nominee, former Vice President Joe Biden, and Republican nominee, President Donald Trump. Now, if you've had your ear to the ground in politics at all in the last day or so, you've probably heard some choice words thrown around like chaotic and childish, and maybe a few more colorful words from a certain CNN reporter. The rundown is, it wasn't informative. It wasn't hopeful or helpful. It wasn't exciting, and it wasn't fun. It was horrible. But that's not going to stop the entirety of the political establishment from analyzing it here to the election, and it certainly won't stop me. So today we're going to discuss the debate through the lens of CNN's recap takeaways, the best traits of each candidate and the worst within the context of the debate, the polls that came out immediately thereafter, and the potential ramifications on the election moving forward. And with that, let's dive right in. Now, before we start, I'd like to say I think I speak for everyone when I say, thank the heavens for Chris Wallace. If the president during that debate was like an ornery toddler, then the Fox News contributor and longtime political journalist was like the teacher who had to tell the kid to stay after class. Now, the debate went off the rails almost immediately, and that's where I'd like to start. Not with the first issue presented by the CNN list, but with the fifth. Because I think that this is where most Americans are going to get their biggest takeaway. It was the chaos of the debate. Donald Trump saying after a comment on his own intelligence, he started talking about the difference between his intelligence and Biden's that ended with the phrase, "Don't ever use the word smart with me." Joe Biden telling another political candidate to shut up on stage, on live television, while being interrupted by that candidate. Calling the candidate a clown on more than one occasion. Now, we're all used to the occasional zinger, but this was madness. This was the flavor of the debate. It was chaos marred by interruptions and viciousness. This was seen on both sides of the debate stage, of course, but I don't want to misrepresent. This type of action was very heavily weighted toward the president. In fact, according to Slate, Trump interrupted either Biden or the moderator Chris Wallace at least 128 times. So that controlled the tone almost completely. But what about substance? We're going to start at the top. We'll begin with the clip that has been played once an hour on every news program on television for the last 24 hours. As you know, I love Chris Wallace. He's usually a hard-ass, heavy-hitting reporter to everyone. But in this case, he tossed Donald Trump the most soft softball I've ever seen in my life. He offered the president the opportunity to disavow white supremacists, which is the easiest home run question you can possibly get. Are Nazis bad? Easy peasy. And for some reason, the president declined to do so. Moving right along, because I feel like that topic has been done to death and everyone's talking about it. We'll move on to the election dispute. Trump continued over the course of the debate to express his lack of faith in mail-in voting. Before we go to this, I think it's prudent to show this statement out of the Trump administration's own FBI. This comes from Christopher Wray and came about last Thursday. He says that he told a Senate committee that widespread voter fraud would be a major challenge for a foreign adversary to pull off. Quote, "We have not seen historically any kind of national voter fraud effort in a major election, whether it's by mail or otherwise. And it's pretty easy to understand why. If you want to commit mail-in voter fraud on a large scale, that means that you need to influence many hundreds of people. You need to steal hundreds of ballots from hundreds of different places. And this is extraordinarily difficult to do without getting caught." I also thought that this segment gave the most stark contrast between the candidates. Trump said, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, "I'm encouraging my supporters to go to the polls and watch very carefully." He used those words, my supporters. As CNN notes, right down here, Biden encouraged voting regardless of affiliation in whatever way they could. As an aside, there are links in the description on how to register to vote, and how to vote, and I encourage everyone to do so. Moving on to the discussion of COVID. This may have been the one topic on which Trump found himself more or less on the defensive. Biden, ever the empathetic orator, laid the deaths of 200,000 individuals at the feet of the president, to which Trump responded with statements about swine flu during the Obama administration and the statement that Biden would have done worse. Trump also made some bold assertions about his vaccine program, which he claims to have in the works and claims will be ready before the election. I would like to note that this is generally not the view held by the average medical professional. Vaccines take a long time to perfect, and by election day is extremely tight timing. But most of this was lost, of course. As CNN notes, it dissolved into bickering almost constantly as the president attempted to derail Biden with consistency. On to the Supreme Court, which has been a huge point of contention since the death of Associate Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg earlier this month. And I think that this was the strongest set of arguments for President Trump. To summarize the situation, in 2016, Republicans in control of the Senate blocked President Obama's appointment of Merrick Garland, claiming that the voters should have a say in who picks the next justice. Since then, many of them have been accused of hypocrisy, as they are now attempting to do the reverse of what they did in 2016. Notably, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina has been bashed with some truly karmic clips of him saying, "If there's a vacancy in 2020, we will not vote to confirm, and you can use my words against me." So Biden, naturally, has taken the position that the vacancy should not be filled until after the election. Trump has taken the reverse. The question about the court was taken into the realm of healthcare and Roe v. Wade before Biden was asked some pointed questions about his potential response to the nomination. Biden declined to answer the question about ending the filibuster and packing the court, and instead deflected, causing the debate to descend again into arguing. I feel that this was the strongest point in the debate for Donald Trump, because this is a real, meaningful hit to Joe Biden if he is made to answer this question. Packing the court is an extreme option, as is ending the filibuster. And if he were to admit to planning to do those, or admit to planning not to do those could have very serious political ramifications for Joe Biden. Finally, we're going to move on to the section which CNN titles Family Matters. Joe Biden's son Hunter and the late Beau were both brought up during the debate. And I felt in this moment, through all of the chaos and madness, Biden shone. And I'm going to read verbatim here because I think that CNN did an excellent job in summary. Trump and his allies have repeatedly made unfounded and false claims to allege that the former vice president and his son, in this case Hunter, acted corruptly in Ukraine. It's an issue Republicans believed at one point would dominate this year's campaign, though it has failed to catch hold amid a global pandemic, urban violence, and economic downturn. Still, some Democrats have wondered how Biden would respond when the topic arose. Some feared he would lose his cool, sensitive to family matters. Instead, Biden seemed prepared and spoke straight to camera as he sought to rebut Trump's claims that his son engaged in wrongdoing when he served on the board of a Ukrainian energy company. "This is not about my family or his family," he says. "This is about your family, the American people. He doesn't want to talk about what you need." Undeterred, Trump kept returning to the issue, as Biden sought to criticize the president for reportedly calling U.S. war dead losers. He brought up the issue of his late son, Beau, who served in Iraq before succumbing to brain cancer in 2015. Instead of rebutting the claims about his views on the military, Trump sought to return the debate to Hunter Biden, saying, I don't know Beau Biden. As Trump launched into an attack on Hunter Biden, including raising his past issues with drug addiction, Biden again turned to camera and addressed the issue, even as Trump was seeking to interrupt. Quote, My son had a drug problem. He's overcome it, and I'm proud of him. I think that in these interactions, Joe Biden got angry. His eyes lit up. He got mad. He took half a step away from the mic and pointed toward President Trump. In that moment, I could see the American people seeing, for the first time in what seems like a long time, a presidential candidate who really cares about something. My son, like a lot of people at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaking it, he's fixed it, he's working on it, and I'm proud of him. I'm proud of my son. Seeing Biden not as a career politician, which he is, but seeing him instead as a father who doesn't let anybody talk about his kids, made him identifiable, and I think made him seem real. Now, before we move on to the polls, I'd like to take a moment to discuss some of the substance of Biden, which I feel wasn't adequately touched on by CNN, or indeed many of the mainstream news outlets except maybe Fox. When not receiving interruptions of conspiracy theories and familial insults, Biden took some real meaningful positions, including on climate change. Here we are, where he advocated for carbon neutrality by, I believe, 2050, and something that I found quite fascinating, turning the entire federal fleet into electric vehicles. He also took meaningful positions on law enforcement. There we are. Saying the cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd either. Making statements on accountability. Expressing the desire for leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement and leaders of law enforcement to sit down and be made to come to some sort of agreement. He also made the point, here we are, he also made the point that when a mental health 911 call was made, it might not necessarily be the police that should be responding alone, that they should have a psychologist or psychiatrist with them to keep them from having to use force. Now, are these the vast, sweeping, systemic changes that many members of the political left want to see? No, absolutely not. But it's real and it's meaningful, and it not only shows that Biden has grown and changed with his voters, but also that he has been listening to them. So, to segue into the potential results of the race, Biden is preaching of unity and togetherness, which appeals to the center, and presenting real, meaningful policy ideas, which may serve to quell some of the fears that the left and the far left has about him. With respect to that preaching togetherness, Biden said at one point that I want to be the president of Democrats and Republicans. These things, coupled with the behavior of the president last night, may serve to pull things gently in Biden's favor. Now let's take a look at the post-debate polls. I am enamored with this map. It shows, relative to who you thought would win the debate and who you thought did win the debate. We see that in every category, Biden is performing better than Trump. Now, I think from a technical perspective, Trump won the debate. He controlled the narrative for almost the entire thing. But on the issues, I think that Biden, generally speaking, came out on top. Now, he may have won the debate, Trump may have won the debate, but that doesn't mean that people necessarily will be enchanted with him after this. Remember, he's down in the polls by a lot. His approval rating is really low, and his disapproval rating is really high. He's trailing behind Biden 7 points nationally, and if we take a look at the 538 snake graph, we see that he is behind in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 swing states, 7 if you count Nevada and Michigan. And he is only ahead currently in Georgia and Iowa. Donald Trump came into the debate behind. He needed to make up ground, and I don't think he made up any of it yesterday. Now, of course, we'll see how things shake out in the next 3 debates, including the vice presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Mike Pence on October 7th. So, be sure to subscribe to be notified of our discussion on that, and any other interesting election news that may come out of this increasingly interesting campaign. Until next time, be like the 2020 presidential debate. Be unique. Yeah. And maybe a little bombastic, but please not too much. And above all, be interesting. See you next time.